The first time I met the president of Ashmere Cove, he was standing on my dock telling me I wasn't allowed to be there. I had driven 6 hours after my aunt's funeral to look at the property she left me, expecting a sagging cabin, a muddy shoreline, and maybe a few unpaid taxes. Instead, I found a gated luxury neighborhood wrapped around a private lake, manicured lawns descending toward the water, and a man in a pressed polo shirt waving a violation notice in my face like he owned the horizon. He said the dock broke community guidelines. He said the shoreline belonged to the HOA. He said if I didn't remove my truck by morning, they'd have it towed. Then I unlocked the cabin with my aunt's key, opened the metal lockbox she had hidden under the sink, and found the deed. Not just to the cabin, not just to the shoreline, to the entire lake bed beneath every dock, every boat slip, and every postcard view those 600 homes were selling for millions. By sundown, I wasn't the outsider they wanted to find. I was the owner of the one thing their whole community was built around, and they had no idea the rules were about to change. My aunt had never married, never bragged, never explained why she refused every offer to sell that cabin. People called her eccentric because she lived simply beside one of the richest developments in the county. But the truth was sharper than that. 43 years earlier, the original developer had needed permanent access to the lake to market the subdivision as exclusive waterfront living. My aunt's father, my grandfather, agreed to a long ground and water use agreement that let the developers build docks, launch boats, and advertise private lake privileges as long as they paid an annual access lease and followed strict usage limits. Back then, the money was modest and the area was rural. Nobody imagined the place would explode into a fortress of waterfront mansions, yacht-style pontoons, and private sunset cruises. Over the decades, the HOA inherited the benefits but ignored the burden. The lease amount barely changed. The restrictions were quietly violated. Extra docks appeared. Party barges multiplied. Retaining walls crept deeper into the water. They treated the lake like a trophy because nobody thought the old family at the cabin was still paying attention. My aunt was paying attention. She just waited until the papers could reach the right hands. I hired a property attorney before I called the HOA back. By the end of that week, I learned 3 things that turned my irritation into strategy. First, the homeowners owned their houses, but not the submerged land under their docks. Second, the community's prized private lake rights were controlled by a renewable access agreement, and renewal was only 3 months away. Third, the board had violated the original limits so many times that if they pushed me hard enough, I could suspend large portions of lake access completely while the violations were reviewed. When I finally agreed to meet them, they came in smiling the way people smile when they think they're about to educate someone poorer than them. The board president called the lease a symbolic relic. Their attorney said it would be bad optics for me to make trouble. One woman on the board actually suggested I should be grateful their neighborhood had increased the value of my aunt's land. I let them finish. Then I slid a survey across the table, followed by photographs of unauthorized docks, then a valuation report showing how much they had underpaid for decades. The room changed. Polite voices turned clipped. Coffee cups stopped moving. That was the moment they realized I hadn't come to negotiate from weakness. I had come with numbers, clauses, and a deadline. Their response was exactly what entitlement always becomes when it meets consequences: panic disguised as outrage. They sent emails accusing me of threatening families. Residents flooded local groups, calling me a predator, a grifter, a heartless stranger trying to extort a community. But none of them posted the actual lease. None of them mentioned the violations. None of them explained why their shared lake paradise depended on land they never bought. So I issued the formal notice. Beginning at renewal, every private dock license would be repriced to current market rates. Every oversized structure would face separate penalties, and community access for the marina, fishing pier, and boat launch would require a new commercial use fee. In plain English, their costs weren't doubling. They were exploding. Within 48 hours, the neighborhood turned on its own board. Emergency meetings packed the clubhouse. Homeowners demanded to know why nobody disclosed the lease exposure before they bought. Real estate agents started whispering. Listings stalled. The same president who tried to tow my truck called me 3 times in one night, suddenly eager to find common ground. I didn't answer. For 40 years, they had enjoyed the lake like it was a birthright. I wanted them to sit with the math first. The lawsuit came 2 weeks later, and by then I almost welcomed it. Court strips away performance. In the courtroom, there were no golf carts, no gated entrances, no boardroom smiles, just paper, history, and ownership. Their lawyers argued that restricting lake access would devastate property values and punish innocent residents. My lawyer replied that the residents had been enjoying discounted privileges created by a contract they never bothered to respect. The judge asked one question that cracked the case open. Had the HOA ever disclosed to buyers that essential lake access relied on renewable rights over privately owned submerged land? Their attorney hesitated too long. That silence said more than any closing statement. We won. Not everything, not instantly, but enough. The HOA was ordered back into negotiations under the original lease framework. The violations were formally recognized, and until a compliant agreement was signed, no new docks or expansions could be approved. By summer, they settled. The new lease brought in more money in 1 year than my aunt had collected in the previous 15. I restored the cabin, rebuilt the dock they tried to ban me from, and every evening I sat there watching the same polished boats glide over water they could finally no longer pretend was free. My aunt had left me more than property. She left me timing. And timing, I learned, is what turns old paper into power.